In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where stars burn with ancient fire and empires rise only to crumble into cosmic dust, one figure stands above all others as the ultimate embodiment of power, tragedy, and darkness. A towering silhouette clad in black armor, breathing with the mechanical rhythm of life support systems, Darth Vader remains the most feared enforcer the galaxy has ever known. Yet behind that mask of terror lies a story far more complex and heartbreaking than most realize. This is the complete chronicle of Darth Vader, from his miraculous birth to his redemptive sacrifice, a journey through every documented moment of the Dark Lord's existence. The miraculous birth. The desert winds of Tatooine blow without mercy across endless dunes of sand, a harsh and unforgiving world where slavery is commonplace and hope is a rare commodity. In the slums of Mos Espa, within a modest dwelling that offers little protection from the twin suns that scorch the planet's surface, a slave woman named Shmi Skywalker lived a life of quiet servitude. She worked for Watto, a blue-skinned Toydarian junk dealer whose shop was filled with salvaged parts and broken dreams. Shmi Skywalker was remarkable not for her circumstances, but for her spirit. Despite being owned by another being, despite living in conditions that would break most souls, she maintained a kindness and warmth that seemed impossible given her situation. She spoke little of her past, for what use was dwelling on freedom when chains were all she had known for so long? Yet, within her womb, something unprecedented was taking shape. The child who would become Darth Vader entered the world approximately 41 years before the Battle of Yavin, born of no father in any conventional sense. Shmi would later tell the Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn a truth that seemed impossible, yet she spoke it with complete certainty. There had been no man in her life, no partner, no biological father. She simply became pregnant, as if the universe itself had decided to create life within her. The Jedi would come to understand this as the will of the Force itself, the mystical energy field that binds all living things together. The Force had created this child, perhaps as an instrument to bring balance to itself, perhaps for reasons beyond mortal comprehension. The boy was named Anakin. From his earliest moments, young Anakin Skywalker displayed abilities that set him apart from other children in Mos Espa's slave quarters. His reflexes were impossibly fast, his instincts uncanny. While other children fumbled with simple tasks, Anakin seemed to anticipate outcomes before they occurred. When Watto put the boy to work in his shop, Anakin demonstrated an extraordinary aptitude for mechanics and engineering that belied his young age. At age 9, he had already built a protocol droid from salvaged parts, programming the unit designated C-3PO to assist his mother with her daily labors. But Anakin's most impressive creation was not the golden droid that would go on to witness the fall and rise of empires. His masterwork was a pod racer, one of the most dangerous racing vehicles in the galaxy. Pod racing was a sport that routinely killed experienced pilots, yet this child slave had not only constructed a functional racer from scrap parts, but he had the audacity to pilot it himself. The boy seemed to have no fear, or perhaps more accurately, his connection to the Force allowed him to navigate threats that would obliterate anyone else. Shmi watched her son with a mixture of pride and worry. She knew Anakin was special, knew that somehow the Force moved through him in ways she could not fully understand. At night, When the twin suns finally set and Tatooine's temperature dropped to bearable levels, she would hold her son close and tell him that someday someone would come to free him, that his life would not be spent in chains. She had no way of knowing how terribly right and terribly wrong she would be. The Force sensitivity within young Anakin was not merely strong, it was unprecedented. His midi-chlorian count, the microscopic organisms that allow Force sensitivity, measured over 20,000 per cell, higher than even the legendary Jedi Master Yoda. This was not just unusual, it was unheard of in the Jedi Order's 1,000-generation history. The boy did not simply have potential, he was potential incarnate, a living nexus of Force energy waiting to be shaped. The discovery fate works in mysterious ways, and the arrival of Qui-Gon Jinn on Tatooine was the catalyst that would set everything in motion. The Jedi Master, along with his Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi, had been escorting Queen Amidala of Naboo away from a Trade Federation invasion. When their royal starship's hyperdrive was damaged during their escape, they were forced to land on Tatooine to find replacement parts. It was meant to be a brief stop, a simple transaction before continuing their journey to Coruscant. Instead, Qui-Gon Jinn found something far more valuable than a hyperdrive generator. The meeting between Qui-Gon and Anakin in Watto's junk shop seemed like chance. But those who believe in the Force know there is no such thing as coincidence. The Jedi Master was immediately struck by the boy's presence. Even without testing his midi-chlorian count, Qui-Gon could sense the incredible power radiating from this child. When a sandstorm forced the travelers to take shelter in the Skywalker hovel, Qui-Gon began to suspect that this boy might be something far beyond a merely Force-sensitive child. The Jedi had long spoken of prophecy, of an ancient legend that foretold the coming of a chosen one who would bring balance to the Force. This chosen one would be born of no father, created by the midi-chlorians themselves, and would possess power beyond measure. For generations, Jedi had debated whether this prophecy was literal truth or metaphorical teaching. As Qui-Gon watched young Anakin, as he learned of the boy's virgin birth and sensed his connection to the Force, a conviction grew within him. This was the chosen one. This slave boy from the Outer Rim was the fulfillment of ancient prophecy. But prophecy is a double-edged blade. It speaks of what will be without revealing the path that leads there. Qui-Gon could not see the dark road ahead, could not imagine that the very act of freeing Anakin and training him would set in motion events that would devastate the galaxy. In his eagerness to see the prophecy fulfilled, in his absolute belief that he had found the chosen one, Qui-Gon made decisions that seemed right in the moment but would have catastrophic consequences. To free Anakin from slavery, Qui-Gon made a wager with Watto. The upcoming Bunta Eve pod race would determine the boy's fate. If Anakin won, he would be free. The boy's mother would remain enslaved, a detail that would haunt Anakin for years to come. The race itself was a death-defying spectacle that showcased exactly why Anakin was special. Multiple racers crashed and burned. Pilots far more experienced than this 9-year-old boy were eliminated in explosions of flame and twisted metal, yet Anakin navigated the treacherous course with preternatural skill, his connection to the Force guiding him around hazards before his conscious mind registered them. He won the race and his freedom, but he was forced to leave his mother behind, a separation that would eventually contribute to his transformation into the Dark Lord Darth Vader. The Jedi Path Coruscant, the galactic capital, was a planet-wide city of gleaming spires and endless structures that reached toward the stars. At its heart stood the Jedi Temple, a massive pyramid structure that had been the home of the Jedi Order for millennia. Within its halls, the Jedi High Council convened to consider the unusual boy that Qui-Gon Jinn had brought before them. The council chamber was circular, with 12 seats arranged in a ring. Each seat held one of the Order's wisest and most powerful members. Master Yoda, the ancient Grand Master who had trained Jedi for 8 centuries. Mace Windu, whose mastery of lightsaber combat was legendary. Ki-Adi-Mundi, Plo Koon, and others, all of them gazing upon this slave boy who Qui-Gon insisted was the chosen one. They tested Anakin, measuring his abilities, probing his connection to the Force. The results were undeniable. The boy's potential was staggering, yet the council was deeply troubled. Anakin was too old, they said. Jedi training typically began in infancy, before a child could form deep attachments to their birth family. At 9 years old, Anakin had known love, had formed bonds, had experienced fear and loss. These emotions, the council warned, could be dangerous. The path to the dark side begins with fear, they taught. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. Qui-Gon argued passionately for Anakin's training. He invoked a prophecy, insisting that the boy was meant to bring balance to the Force. Master Yoda remained skeptical. Clouded, the boy's future was. Much fear in him, Yoda sensed. Yet Qui-Gon would not be deterred. He promised to train Anakin himself, even offering to take him as his Padawan, which would mean essentially replacing Obi-Wan Kenobi, who was nearing the completion of his own training. The decision was delayed when Queen Amidala decided to return to Naboo to liberate her planet from the Trade Federation's occupation. The Jedi accompanied her, and it was during the ensuing Battle of Naboo that everything changed. In the hangar of the Theed Royal Palace, Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi confronted a Sith warrior, a Zabrak, named Darth Maul, who wielded a double-bladed red lightsaber with lethal precision. The Sith had been thought extinct for a millennium, yet here was undeniable proof of their return. The duel was intense and brutal. Qui-Gon, despite his formidable skills, was ultimately struck down by Darth Maul's blade, run through as he tried to defend against the Sith's relentless assault. As Qui-Gon fell, Obi-Wan screamed in anguish. The Padawan, separated from his master by a ray shield, could only watch helplessly as Qui-Gon Jinn died. When the shield deactivated, Obi-Wan launched himself at Maul with pure fury, engaging in a blistering exchange that saw the young Jedi ultimately triumph, cutting the Sith in half. In his final moments, Qui-Gon made Obi-Wan promise to train Anakin. The dying Jedi Master insisted once more that the boy was the chosen one, that his training was essential. Obi-Wan, grief-stricken and burdened with a responsibility he did not feel ready for, agreed. He would honor his master's final wish, even though he had reservations about the boy. Thus began Anakin Skywalker's formal Jedi training under Obi-Wan Kenobi. The relationship between master and apprentice would prove complex. Obi-Wan had just achieved the rank of Jedi Knight himself. He had no experience as a teacher. He was given a Padawan not by choice, but by obligation, by a deathbed promise. And this Padawan was no ordinary student. Anakin was powerful beyond measure, talented to a degree that sometimes made Obi-Wan feel inadequate. The boy learned faster than any Padawan in recent memory, mastering techniques that should have taken years to perfect. Yet there was a recklessness to Anakin, an emotional intensity that worried Obi-Wan. The Jedi Code taught detachment, serenity, the releasing of emotion into the Force. But Anakin felt everything deeply, passionately. He loved fiercely, which the Jedi discouraged. He formed attachments, which the Jedi forbade. And beneath his cheerful exterior, there was anger, a darkness that occasionally surfaced when he was frustrated or felt he was being held back. Still, Anakin's talents were undeniable. His lightsaber skills developed rapidly, and he became particularly adept at the aggressive form buffer combat style, which emphasized powerful strikes and counterattacks. His connection to the Force allowed him to perform feats that astonished even experienced Jedi masters. And his mechanical aptitude continued to serve him well. Anakin maintained and modified his lightsaber constantly, and he became one of the best pilots in the Jedi Order, perhaps one of the best pilots in the entire galaxy. The Clone Wars Crucible. 10 years passed. The boy who had been freed from slavery on Tatooine was now a 19-year-old Padawan, tall and powerful, with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. Anakin Skywalker had become a hero of the Republic, a Jedi whose exploits were celebrated across the galaxy. Yet those years had not been without pain. Early in his time with Obi-Wan, Anakin had begun experiencing nightmares about his mother. He saw her suffering, felt her pain across the vastness of space. These visions tormented him, but when he brought his concerns to Obi-Wan and other Jedi Masters, they counseled him to let go of his attachments, to trust in the Force and release his fears. They did not understand that for Anakin, these were not mere anxieties. They were premonitions, glimpses into actual events occurring on Tatooine. When Anakin was 19, he was assigned to protect Senator Padme Amidala, the former Queen of Naboo, whom he had met as a child during the Battle of Naboo. Someone was trying to assassinate her, and the Jedi Council felt that Anakin, who already knew the senator, would be an appropriate choice for her security detail. What they did not anticipate was that Anakin would fall desperately in love with her, nor that she would come to return those feelings. During this assignment, Anakin's nightmares about his mother intensified until he could no longer ignore them. Against orders, he traveled to Tatooine with Padme, determined to find Shmi Skywalker. What he discovered there would mark the first true step on his path to darkness. His mother had been freed from slavery years earlier, purchased and freed by a moisture farmer named Cliegg Lars, whom she had married. But recently, she had been kidnapped by Tusken Raiders, the hostile nomadic species that roamed Tatooine's deserts. Anakin tracked the raiders to their camp, his rage building with each passing moment. When he finally found his mother, she was bound to a wooden frame, beaten and tortured beyond recognition. She died in his arms, her last words a whisper of love for her son. Something inside Anakin Skywalker broke in that moment. The Jedi teachings about serenity, about letting go of emotion, about compassion for all life, they all evaporated in the white-hot furnace of his fury. He slaughtered every Tusken Raider in the camp. Not just the warriors who had tortured his mother, but everyone, the women, the children. He cut them down without mercy, his blue lightsaber blade becoming an instrument of pure vengeance. When it was over, when he stood amid the carnage he had created, Anakin felt no remorse. He felt power. He felt satisfaction. And beneath it all, he felt the first whispers of something dark that told him he had been right to do what he did, that the strong had every right to punish those who hurt them. This massacre on Tatooine, this moment of unchecked rage and violence, should have been a warning sign that Anakin Skywalker was walking a dangerous path. Yet he told no one except Padme, and she, in her love for him, did not report his actions to the Jedi Council. Instead, she tried to comfort him, to assure him that he was a good person who had acted in the heat of grief. This enabling of his darkness, this covering up of what should have been exposed and addressed, was another step toward Darth Vader's eventual emergence. Shortly after his mother's death, Anakin rushed to Geonosis to rescue Obi-Wan, who had been captured while investigating a separatist plot. The rescue attempt failed, and both Anakin and Padme were captured themselves. They were sentenced to execution in the Geonosis arena, where they would face savage beasts before a cheering crowd. It was during these moments, when death seemed certain, that Anakin confessed his love to Padme, and she admitted that she loved him as well. They survived the arena through the timely arrival of Jedi reinforcements, but the Battle of Geonosis marked the beginning of something far larger. The Clone Wars had begun. A massive conflict between the Galactic Republic and the Confederacy of Independent Systems, a separatist movement led by former Jedi Count Dooku, who had become the Sith Lord Darth Tyrannus. The war would rage for 3 years, consuming countless lives and transforming the galaxy. For Anakin Skywalker, the Clone Wars were a crucible that forged him into something simultaneously greater and lesser than he had been. He was knighted earlier than most Jedi, promoted to Jedi Knight shortly after the war began due to his exceptional performance in combat. He became a general, leading clone troopers into battle across dozens of worlds. His victories were legendary. His courage inspired the men who served under him. He earned the nickname the Hero with No Fear, and his exploits were celebrated throughout the Republic. Yet the Clone Wars also corrupted him. War is not conducive to Jedi philosophy. The Jedi were meant to be peacekeepers, not soldiers, yet the war forced them into roles as military commanders. Anakin, who had always been aggressive and passionate, found that war rewarded these traits. His willingness to take risks, to use aggressive tactics, to do whatever was necessary to achieve victory, these qualities that the Jedi Council found concerning made him an incredibly effective general. During the Clone Wars, Anakin took on a Padawan learner of his own, a young Togruta named Ahsoka Tano. Their relationship would prove to be one of the most important in his life. Ahsoka was spirited, rebellious, and brave, qualities that Anakin recognized in himself. Training her forced him to become more responsible, more thoughtful. She challenged him, questioned him, and in many ways helped him become a better person and a better Jedi. Together, Anakin and Ahsoka fought in countless battles. They faced separatist generals, dark side assassins, and seemingly impossible odds. The bond between them grew deep, transcending the typical master-apprentice relationship. Ahsoka became like a younger sister to Anakin, and he became fiercely protective of her. When she was falsely accused of bombing the Jedi Temple, and expelled from the order pending trial, Anakin worked tirelessly to prove her innocence. He succeeded, discovering that the true culprit was Barriss Offee, another Padawan who had become disillusioned with the Jedi Order's role in the war. Though Ahsoka was exonerated, the damage was done. She had been betrayed by the very institution that was supposed to protect her, and when offered the chance to rejoin the Order, she declined. Her departure devastated Anakin. It was another abandonment, another loss that fed his growing distrust of the Jedi Council and their judgments. If they could be so wrong about Ahsoka, what else were they wrong about? Throughout the Clone Wars, Anakin developed a relationship with Supreme Chancellor Palpatine that would prove to be his ultimate undoing. Palpatine had taken an interest in the boy since their first meeting when Anakin was 9 years old. Now, as the war raged, Palpatine positioned himself as a mentor and father figure to Anakin. He offered advice, showed interest in Anakin's concerns and frustrations, and gradually cultivated a trust that the Jedi Council never fully earned. What Anakin did not know, what almost no one knew, was that Palpatine was living a double life. He was not merely the Chancellor of the Republic. He was Darth Sidious, Dark Lord of the Sith, and the entire Clone Wars was his creation, designed to manipulate both sides of the conflict and position himself to seize absolute power. Count Dooku, the leader of the Separatists, was Sidious's apprentice. The whole war was a Sith plot, and Anakin Skywalker was one of its primary targets. The fall, the final year of the Clone Wars, brought everything to a terrible crescendo. Anakin had been married to Padme in secret for 3 years, a direct violation of the Jedi Code's prohibition against attachment. They had managed to keep their relationship hidden, but it weighed on Anakin constantly. He was living a lie, forced to pretend that the person he loved more than anything meant nothing to him. When Padme revealed that she was pregnant, Anakin's joy was mixed with fear. How could they continue to hide their relationship with a child on the way? Then the nightmares began again. Just as he had once dreamed of his mother's death, Anakin now had visions of Padme dying in childbirth. Night after night, he saw her suffering, saw her dying, and he was powerless to stop it. The visions tormented him, consumed him. He had failed to save his mother. He would not fail to save Padme. He could not lose her. The thought of her death drove him to the edge of madness. Desperate and afraid, Anakin confided his fears to Chancellor Palpatine. The Chancellor listened with apparent sympathy, then told Anakin a story. It was the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, a Sith Lord so powerful that he could use the Force to influence midi-chlorians to create life and prevent death. Plagueis, Palpatine explained, had discovered secrets that the Jedi could never teach, abilities that could save those you loved from dying. The implication was clear, though Palpatine did not state it outright. The dark side of the Force offered power that the light side could not. The seed was planted. As Anakin's visions continued, as his fear for Padme grew, he became increasingly obsessed with finding a way to save her. The Jedi Council offered him no comfort. When he told them of his fears, they counseled detachment, told him to release those he loved back into the Force, to accept death as a natural part of life. Their advice felt like a betrayal. They were asking him to accept Padme's death, to do nothing while she died. Events accelerated rapidly. Obi-Wan and Anakin were sent to rescue Chancellor Palpatine from General Grievous's flagship above Coruscant. During the mission, they confronted Count Dooku. The resulting duel saw Anakin defeat the Sith Lord, disarming him and bringing him to his knees. Palpatine urged Anakin to kill Dooku, and after a moment's hesitation, Anakin complied, executing the defenseless Count. It was an act against the Jedi Code, a moment of cold-blooded killing that Anakin immediately regretted, yet Palpatine praised him for it, insisting he had done the right thing. The Jedi Council's relationship with Anakin deteriorated further when they made a controversial decision. Palpatine appointed Anakin to be his personal representative on the Jedi Council, an unprecedented move. The Council, suspicious of Palpatine's motives and his refusal to give up emergency war powers, accepted Anakin onto the Council, but denied him the rank of Master. To Anakin, this felt like a calculated insult. He was being used by both the Council and the Chancellor, caught between competing authorities. The Council's distrust of Palpatine led them to make a fateful request. They asked Anakin to spy on the Chancellor, to report on their private conversations. Anakin was appalled. They were asking him to betray a mentor and friend, a man who had shown him nothing but support when the Council had repeatedly held him back. It was another betrayal in Anakin's eyes, more evidence that the Jedi Council did not trust him or respect him. Everything came to a head when Palpatine finally revealed his true nature. He told Anakin that he was Darth Sidious, Dark Lord of the Sith, the very enemy the Jedi had been seeking throughout the war. But he presented this truth not as a threat, but as an opportunity. He was the only one, Palpatine insisted, who knew the secrets of preserving life. If Anakin wanted to save Padme, he would need Palpatine's knowledge. The dark side could give him the power to save her. Anakin, torn between his duty as a Jedi and his love for Padme, made what he thought was the right choice. He reported Palpatine to the Jedi Council, specifically to Master Mace Windu. Windu immediately took a team of Jedi Masters to arrest the Chancellor. But as Anakin sat alone in the Council chambers, his fear for Padme overwhelmed him. Without Palpatine, there was no hope of saving her. He had to know more, had to learn these dark side techniques before it was too late. Anakin rushed to Palpatine's office and arrived to find Windu holding his lightsaber to the Sith Lord's throat. Palpatine was apparently helpless, defeated, bleeding for his life. Windu announced that Palpatine was too dangerous to be left alive, that he would be executed. In that moment, Anakin made his choice. He struck, severing Mace Windu's hand and allowing Palpatine to unleash Force lightning that threw the Jedi Master out the window to his death. There was no going back. Anakin had just helped kill a member of the Jedi Council. He was a traitor to the Order, a criminal. Palpatine, seeing the young Jedi's desperation, offered him everything he wanted. "Kneel before me," Palpatine commanded, "and I will teach you the ways of the dark side. I will help you save Padme." Anakin, seeing no other path forward, knelt. He pledged himself to Palpatine's teachings, and in that moment, Anakin Skywalker ceased to be. He was christened with a new name, one that would echo through history as the galaxy's greatest villain. He was now Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith. The Purge Palpatine's first command to his new apprentice was clear. The Jedi Order had become too dangerous, too powerful. They had attempted to coup against the Republic, Palpatine claimed, and now they had to be destroyed. Darth Vader, still reeling from his choice, still clinging to the belief that this path would save Padme, carried out his master's will. He led the 501st Legion of Clone Troopers, the unit that had served under him throughout the Clone Wars, in an assault on the Jedi Temple. Across the galaxy, Palpatine executed Order 66, a command buried deep in the clones' programming that identified Jedi as traitors to be eliminated immediately. In moments, Jedi were cut down by the very soldiers they had led into battle. Obi-Wan survived through luck and quick thinking. Yoda survived through his extraordinary power and wisdom. But most of the Jedi Order perished in that first wave of betrayal. At the temple, Vader was merciless. He cut down Jedi who had trained alongside him, who had treated him as a brother. When he reached the younglings, children who were just beginning their training, he did not hesitate. His lightsaber blade, still blue at this point, cut through them without mercy. They begged for his help, thinking he had come to save them from the clone troopers, and he killed them where they stood. This act, more than any other, showed how completely Anakin Skywalker had been consumed by darkness. The boy who had once been a slave, who had dreamed of freeing other slaves, now brought death to children without a flicker of conscience. Palpatine then sent Vader to Mustafar, a volcanic planet where the Separatist leadership was hiding. His task was simple: kill them all, end the war. Vader slaughtered the Separatist Council without hesitation, cutting down the very leaders whose movement Palpatine had secretly orchestrated. With their deaths, the Clone Wars ended, but not in victory for the Republic. Instead, Palpatine declared the Republic dead and proclaimed himself Emperor of a new galactic empire. The thunderous applause from the Senate was the sound of democracy dying. Padme, horrified by what she had learned about Anakin's actions, traveled to Mustafar to confront him. She begged him to stop, to come away with her, to leave this darkness behind. But Vader was too far gone. When he saw Obi-Wan emerge from Padme's ship, having stowed away to confront his former apprentice, Vader's rage boiled over. He accused Padme of betraying him, of bringing the Jedi to kill him. In his fury, he used the Force to choke her, lifting her off the ground and crushing her throat until she collapsed unconscious. The duel between Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi was a tragic clash between two brothers. They had fought side by side for over a decade, had saved each other's lives countless times, had developed a bond that transcended the usual master-apprentice relationship. Now they fought to kill each other on the banks of a lava river, surrounded by the hellscape of Mustafar's volcanic landscape. Vader fought with rage and power, his attacks fueled by the dark side and his absolute belief in his own superiority. Obi-Wan fought with skill and sorrow, defending desperately against his former student's assault. The duel ranged across the facility, through control rooms and onto platforms suspended above molten lava. Vader believed he had already won, that his new powers made him unstoppable. He was wrong. The duel ended when Obi-Wan gained a high ground on a steep lava bank. He warned Vader not to try to attack from such a disadvantaged position, but Vader's arrogance would not let him retreat. He leapt, attempting to flip over Obi-Wan and strike him down. With 3 swift strikes, Obi-Wan severed Vader's left arm and both legs. The new Sith Lord tumbled onto the scorching black sand at the river's edge. Vader's robes ignited. The volcanic heat that radiated from the lava river set him ablaze, and he began to burn alive. Obi-Wan, heartbroken and crying, watched as his brother burned. "You were the chosen one," he shouted over Vader's screams. "You were supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them. Bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness." Vader's screams of agony and rage echoed across the volcanic plains as Obi-Wan retrieved his former apprentice's lightsaber and walked away, unable to watch any longer. Vader should have died there. He was limbless, burned over most of his body, left to suffocate in toxic volcanic gases. But the dark side would not let him die. His hatred, his rage, his refusal to accept defeat kept him alive through sheer force of will. When Palpatine arrived, drawn by his connection to his new apprentice, he found Vader still clinging to life at the very edge of a lava flow. Palpatine brought Vader to a medical facility on Coruscant, where he underwent extensive cybernetic reconstruction. His damaged lungs were replaced with mechanical breathing apparatus. His destroyed limbs were replaced with prosthetic arms and legs. His burned flesh was treated as much as possible, then encased in a life support suit that would sustain him for the rest of his life. The transformation was complete when the famous mask was lowered onto his scarred face, clicking into place and sealing with a hiss. The mask's respiratory apparatus activated, and for the first time, the galaxy heard the mechanical breathing that would become synonymous with terror. When Vader was finally conscious and mobile, his first question was about Padme. The Emperor told him the truth as he saw it. Vader had killed her in his anger on Mustafar. She had died, along with their unborn child. The news broke something in Vader that could never be repaired. He had done all of this to save her, had betrayed everything he believed in, had slaughtered children and his former friends, all to prevent her death. And in the end, he had killed her himself. His scream of anguish was so powerful that it buckled metal and shattered glass throughout the medical bay. The dark side surged through him in a wave of pure grief and rage that seemed to shake the very foundations of the Force itself. This moment marked the final death of Anakin Skywalker. Whatever remnants of the Jedi Knight had survived were cremated in the flames of Mustafar and buried beneath the mask and armor. What remained was Darth Vader, a being of pure darkness fueled by self-hatred and rage. He had nothing left to live for except serving his master and inflicting the pain he felt onto the galaxy that had taken everything from him. The Red Blade. Shortly after his reconstruction, Vader faced a reality he had not considered. His lightsaber, the weapon he had carried as Anakin Skywalker, had been lost on Mustafar, claimed by Obi-Wan. As a Sith Lord, he could not simply construct a new lightsaber with a naturally colored crystal as the Jedi did. The Sith tradition required something different, something darker. Emperor Palpatine explained the process to his apprentice. To create a true Sith lightsaber, Vader would need to take a kyber crystal from a Jedi he had personally defeated and killed. He would then need to corrupt that crystal through a process known as bleeding, pouring his pain, rage, and hatred into the living crystal until it could no longer resist and turned crimson. The process was both a test of Vader's commitment to the dark side and a symbolic act of corrupting something pure and turning it to evil. Vader accepted this task without hesitation. Using the Force and intelligence from the Empire's extensive records, he located a surviving Jedi Master named Kirak Infila. Infila had taken a Barash vow before Order 66 was executed, a commitment that separated him from the Jedi Order and required him to remain isolated on a remote world. This vow had inadvertently saved his life, as he was not connected to the wider order when the purge began. He had established himself on the river moon of Aldolim, living near a temple and seeking enlightenment through solitude. Vader traveled to Aldolim with a contingent of clone troopers. His arrival did not go unnoticed. Infilla sensed the dark presence approaching and prepared himself for battle. When Vader and his troopers attacked, they found themselves facing a Jedi Master at the height of his powers. Infilla wielded a curved hilt lightsaber with exceptional skill, his style optimized for single combat. The initial confrontation ended in disaster for Vader. Despite his power in the dark side, despite his cybernetic enhancements, he was still adjusting to his new body. The heavy armor restricted his movement. The constant pain from his injuries distracted him. And beneath it all, the emotional trauma of recent events left him vulnerable. Infilla defeated Vader in their first duel. The Jedi Master's lightsaber slashed across Vader's armor, and he kicked the Sith Lord into the river below. Vader sank beneath the surface, his damaged respiratory system unable to filter the water. He was drowning, defeated, seemingly about to meet an inglorious end at the hands of the very first Jedi he had been sent to kill. But Vader refused to die. Using the Force, he created a bubble of air around his mask and walked along the river bottom to shore. As he pulled himself from the water, damaged and defeated, he encountered a Class 4 power droid. In a desperate act, Vader tore the droid apart and used its components to repair his own damaged systems. The sight of the Dark Lord cobbling himself back together with droid parts was a dark mirror of his childhood spent building droids on Tatooine. The innocent mechanic slave had become a monster who cannibalized machines to survive. With his systems repaired enough to function, Vader plotted his revenge. He studied Infilla's tactics, analyzed his fighting style, and planned a strategy that would compensate for his own limitations. When they met for their second duel, Vader was prepared. The battle raged across the temple grounds, two masters of the Force locked in combat. But this time, Vader had learned from his defeat. He used the Force in creative and brutal ways, manipulating the environment, using psychological warfare. When he finally had Infilla at his mercy, he used the Force to snap the Jedi Master's neck, killing him instantly. But Vader's rage was not satisfied. He used the Force to lift the massive dam that held back the river above the town where Infilla had lived. The locals had sheltered the Jedi Master, had welcomed him into their community. For this crime of harboring a Jedi, Vader executed them all. He broke the dam and sent countless tons of water crashing down onto the settlement below, drowning every man, woman, and child. It was a demonstration of the monster he had become, willing to commit genocide to make a point. From Infilla's curved hilt lightsaber, Vader removed the green kyber crystal. This crystal had served a Jedi Master faithfully for decades, had been attuned to the light side of the Force and to Infilla's particular Force signature. Now it would be corrupted and twisted to serve darkness. Emperor Palpatine commanded Vader to travel to Mustafar to perform the bleeding ritual. The choice of location was deliberate and cruel. Mustafar was where Vader had been maimed and burned, where Anakin Skywalker had effectively died. Palpatine wanted his apprentice to confront that trauma, to draw power from it, and to cement his connection to the dark side through pain and rage. Vader returned to Mustafar, a world he had hoped never to see again. The volcanic planet held nothing but terrible memories, yet it also resonated with dark side energy. Years before, the Dark Jedi Scare Khan had brought immense suffering to this world, and that darkness had seeped into Mustafar's very geology. It was the perfect place for a Sith to perform a dark side ritual. In a cave beneath what would eventually become his fortress, Vader prepared to bleed the Kyber crystal. He dismantled Infila's lightsaber and placed the crystal on a rock altar stained with ancient darkness. Following Palpatine's instructions, he began to pour his emotions into the crystal. His pain from his injuries, his rage at what had happened to him, his hatred for Obi-Wan, for Padme, for the Jedi, for the galaxy that had taken everything from him. Most of all, his self-hatred, his absolute loathing for what he had become and what he had done. The Kyber crystal resisted. These crystals were living embodiments of the Force, attuned to the light side. They did not want to be corrupted. The crystal fought back against Vader's assault, and in its resistance, it showed him visions. The Force itself was offering Vader one last chance to turn back from darkness, presenting him with an alternative path he could still choose. In the vision, Vader saw himself rejecting the dark side. He saw himself killing Palpatine instead of serving him. He saw himself returning to Obi-Wan, begging for forgiveness, admitting he had been wrong. In this vision of what could be, Vader was redeemed. He returned to the light, reclaimed his identity as Anakin Skywalker, and lived the life he should have lived. The vision was the crystal's desperate attempt to save both Vader and itself, offering hope that redemption was possible even after everything that had happened. But Vader rejected the vision with absolute finality. He slammed his gauntleted fist down on the crystal, physically and metaphorically crushing the hope it offered. "No," he growled, "I refuse. This is all there is." Or perhaps, as one account suggests, there was a question in his refusal. Is this all there is? A moment of doubt before his conviction hardened once more. Either way, his decision was made. Vader unleashed the full force of his pain and rage into the crystal. He screamed, pouring 20 years of suffering into a tiny gem. His anguish was so powerful that the cave itself responded. Volcanic activity spiked across Mustafar. Storms erupted in the planet's atmosphere. The Force itself seemed to shudder at the violence being done to the crystal. Finally, the Kyber crystal's will shattered. Unable to resist any longer, it bled. The beautiful green color that had represented hope and life and the light side transformed into deep crimson, the color of blood and anger and the dark side. The crystal had been broken, tortured into serving evil. In that moment, Vader had created his first true Sith weapon. He returned to Coruscant and presented himself to Palpatine, igniting the blade for the first time before his master. The crimson light reflected off Vader's mask, and Palpatine smiled with satisfaction. Vader was now truly his, bound to darkness by his own choices and his own actions. The last vestiges of Anakin Skywalker had been burned away in the flames of a corrupted Kyber crystal. This lightsaber served Vader well as he began his new role as the Emperor's enforcer, but it would not remain his primary weapon for long. During a mission to eliminate more surviving Jedi, Vader was ambushed by bounty hunters who had been hired to kill him. They used a tractor beam device to pull his lightsaber away from him, and in the struggle, the hilt was destroyed. The kyber crystal survived, fallen into Vader's outstretched hand through the Force. With the crystal preserved, Vader constructed a new hilt, this one of his own design rather than adapted from Infilla's weapon. The new lightsaber was straight-hilted, similar to the weapon he had carried as Anakin, but optimized for his new cybernetic body and altered fighting style. This second red lightsaber would become the iconic weapon associated with Darth Vader, the blade he carried throughout his service to the Empire until his final confrontation with Luke Skywalker aboard the second Death Star. The creation of Vader's red lightsaber was more than just acquiring a new weapon. It was a ritual that completed his transformation into a Sith Lord. By killing a Jedi, taking his crystal, and corrupting it through sheer force of will and emotion, Vader had proven himself capable of the cruelty and power that the dark side required. He had confronted his own trauma on Mustafar and emerged even darker than before. And he had rejected the light side's final offer of redemption, choosing instead to embrace his new identity completely. From this point forward, Darth Vader was fully formed. The tragic hero who had once been Anakin Skywalker was buried so deep beneath layers of pain, rage, and darkness that it seemed impossible he could ever resurface. For the next 2 decades, that would prove to be true. Vader served his master without question, became the most feared being in the galaxy, and committed atrocities that made his slaughter of the Jedi Temple younglings seem almost merciful by comparison. Yet the kyber crystal's vision had planted a seed, even if Vader denied it. Deep within his black heart, beneath all the hatred and pain, a tiny fragment of Anakin Skywalker remained. It would take his son, a young man he did not even know existed, to nurture that fragment back into something that might, against all odds, become redemption. But that reunion and that redemption lay years in the future. For now, there was only darkness, only power, and only the terrifying figure of Darth Vader, the Emperor's iron fist, ready to crush anyone who stood against the new empire. The Inquisitorius, instruments of terror. The Great Jedi Purge had been devastatingly effective, but Emperor Palpatine understood that Order 66 alone would not eliminate every last Jedi. The galaxy was vast beyond comprehension, containing billions of star systems. Even the Clone Wars had touched only a fraction of them. Inevitably, some Jedi would escape the initial purge, either through luck, skill, or simply being too remote to be reached quickly. These survivors, if left unchecked, could become focal points for resistance against the Empire. They had to be found. They had to be eliminated. But a galaxy was too large for even Darth Vader to police alone. The Dark Lord needed assistance, operatives who could hunt Jedi across multiple worlds simultaneously. However, these hunters could not be ordinary soldiers or even elite Force users. They needed to understand how Jedi thought, how they fought, how they hid. They needed to be able to sense the Force and track Force sensitives. There was only one pool of candidates who met these requirements. The Inquisitorius program was Palpatine's solution, a twisted perversion of the Jedi Order that had once stood for peace and justice. The Inquisitors would be former Jedi themselves, broken and turned to the dark side, then trained to hunt their former brothers and sisters. It was psychological warfare as much as military necessity, ensuring that even in hiding, surviving Jedi would face the nightmare of being hunted by their own kind. Vader personally oversaw the Inquisitorius program, training the fallen Jedi in the ways of the dark side. But Palpatine had learned from his mistake with Dooku and his success with Vader. The Inquisitors would be powerful, yes, but intentionally limited. They would never learn the deeper secrets of the Sith, never be taught how to truly transcend their limitations. They were tools, weapons to be used and discarded, not potential successors or rivals. The leader of the Inquisitorius was the Grand Inquisitor, a Padawan Jedi who had once served as a Jedi Temple guard. His fall to darkness had been gradual, beginning with disillusionment during the Clone Wars, the trial of Ahsoka Tano, in which she was falsely accused of terrorism and expelled from the Order before her innocence was proven, had been a catalyst for his loss of faith. How could the Jedi who claimed to serve justice make such a terrible mistake? How could they cast out one of their own based on incomplete evidence? When Order 66 came, when the Jedi Order fell, the Padawan Temple Guard saw it as the failure of a corrupt institution. He embraced the dark side and became the Emperor's chosen leader of the Inquisitorius. The Grand Inquisitor was a formidable warrior. His red double-bladed lightsaber could spin at incredible speeds, creating an almost impenetrable barrier of crimson light. He was steeped in knowledge of the Jedi Order, having spent years guarding the temple and learning about Jedi history and customs. This knowledge made him the perfect predator. He knew where Jedi might hide, what tactics they might use, how they would think when hunted. He was methodical, patient, and absolutely ruthless in executing his duties. Under the Grand Inquisitor's command, other fallen Jedi joined the ranks. Each was assigned a number and a title, brother or sister, followed by their ordinal designation. The second sister had been Trilla Suduri, a Padawan who was captured by the Empire and tortured until she broke. Her master, Sera Junda, had been tortured as well and forced to reveal Trilla's location, a betrayal that fed Trilla's transformation into an Inquisitor. She became one of the most deadly hunters in the Inquisitorius, fueled by rage at her former master and at the Jedi who had failed to protect her. The fifth brother was a large, imposing Inquisitor who favored brute force and physical power. He was less elegant than the Grand Inquisitor, but perhaps more terrifying, using raw strength and intimidation to overwhelm his prey. The seventh sister was cunning and tactical. Preferring to set traps and use psychological warfare, she commanded probe droids that could track targets across vast distances and deployed various tools of surveillance and deception. The ninth sister had been a Jedi named Masana Tide, a Dawutan female whose abilities in psychometry allowed her to read the history of objects through touch. After Order 66, she was captured, and Vader himself oversaw her fall to the dark side. One of her eyes was put out during her torture and transformation, replaced with a cybernetic implant that gave her a perpetually haunting appearance. Despite losing part of her vision, she remained a formidable warrior, specializing in close combat and brute strength attacks. Each Inquisitor underwent training under Darth Vader that was as brutal as it was effective. Vader did not teach them as Obi-Wan had taught him or as he had taught Ahsoka. There was no compassion in his instruction, no care for their well-being or development. He broke them down and rebuilt them as weapons. During training, Inquisitors often lost limbs, experiencing the pain and disability that Vader himself lived with daily. These were not training accidents. They were deliberate lessons about loss, about adapting to disability, about drawing power from suffering. Vader changed their fighting style fundamentally. The Jedi had taught defensive combat, using the lightsaber to protect and disarm rather than to kill. Form 3, Soresu, which focused on defense and deflection, had been commonly taught. The Inquisitors were retrained to fight offensively, aggressively, with the intent to kill. Vader taught them his own style derived from Form 5, emphasizing powerful strikes and overwhelming assault. The spinning, double-bladed lightsabers that most Inquisitors carried were designed to intimidate as much as to fight effectively. When those blades spun at high speed, they created a disk of deadly red light that was as much a psychological weapon as a physical one. The Inquisitors' primary mission was hunting surviving Jedi, but they had secondary objectives as well. They were tasked with finding Force-sensitive children and bringing them to the Empire as part of Project Harvester. The Empire wanted to identify Force-sensitives early to either corrupt them into serving the dark side or eliminate them before they could become threats. Thousands of children were taken from their families, screened for Force sensitivity, and then either inducted into Imperial service or made to disappear. It was kidnapping and indoctrination on a galactic scale, preventing the next generation of Jedi from ever emerging. The Inquisitors operated from a fortress called Fortress Inquisitorius, located on the water moon Nur in the Mustafar system. The fortress was a place of torture and interrogation, where captured Jedi and Force sensitives were broken down through physical and psychological torment. Within its walls, Jedi were forced to confront their deepest fears through dark side rituals. They were shown visions of their failure, of the Order's destruction, of the futility of resistance. Many broke under this treatment, and those who did were given a choice: join the Inquisitorius or die. Most chose survival, no matter what it cost their souls. The Inquisitors' campaign against the Jedi was horrifyingly successful. In the early years after Order 66, they eliminated dozens of surviving Jedi across the Outer Rim and beyond. Each kill was reported back to Vader, each success noted and rewarded. The Inquisitors competed with each other for these kills, for the recognition and power that came with successfully eliminating Jedi. This competition was encouraged. It kept them focused on their mission and prevented them from organizing against Vader or the Emperor. However, the Inquisitors were not without failures and complications. Some missions went wrong. Some Jedi proved too powerful or too clever to be caught. And occasionally, an Inquisitor would begin to question their path, would remember what they had been before the dark side claimed them. These moments of doubt were dangerous, and Vader dealt with them swiftly and brutally. The 10th brother, who had been the Jedi Proset Dibs, failed in a mission and showed signs of wavering conviction. Vader killed him personally, a message to the other Inquisitors that failure and doubt would not be tolerated. The 4th sister, known as Lin Rakish, was one of the first Inquisitors recruited shortly after Order 66. She participated in the hunt for Obi-Wan Kenobi on Tatooine and was involved in recruiting Barriss Offee, the former Padawan who had bombed the Jedi Temple years earlier and framed Ahsoka Tano. Offee's recruitment was seen as a triumph, turning someone who had already been disillusioned with the Jedi into a weapon against them. But Offee's time as an Inquisitor was brief. During her first mission to kill a Jedi alongside the fourth sister, Offie had an epiphany. She saw the evil she was serving, understood that her disillusionment with the Jedi did not justify serving an even greater darkness. In a moment of redemption, she used the Force to push the fourth sister off a cliff and return to the light side, helping the Jedi they had been sent to kill. The most ambitious Inquisitor was the third sister, known as Reva Sevander. Unlike most Inquisitors who genuinely embraced the dark side, Reva had her own agenda. She had been a youngling in the Jedi Temple during Order 66, one of the children Anakin Skywalker had cut down. She had survived by hiding among the corpses of her friends, and she had seen Vader's face before he put on his mask. From that moment, she had carried a burning desire for revenge. She joined the Inquisitorius specifically to get close to Vader, to find an opportunity to kill him and avenge her fallen friends. Reva was ruthless in her pursuit of advancement within the Inquisitorius. She challenged the Grand Inquisitor's authority, seeking to replace him and earn Vader's trust. When the hunt for Obi-Wan Kenobi began, Reva saw her opportunity. She would capture Kenobi, present him to Vader, and in that moment of triumph, strike down the Dark Lord. Her plan was bold and nearly succeeded. She actually managed to stab the Grand Inquisitor, seemingly killing him and taking his position. She pursued Kenobi relentlessly, even kidnapping young Leia Organa to draw the Jedi Master out of hiding. But Reva's plan ultimately failed. The Grand Inquisitor had survived her attack and revealed her treachery at a crucial moment. Vader himself confronted her, and in a duel that demonstrated the vast gulf between an Inquisitor and a Sith Lord, effortlessly defeated her. Vader knew her true identity, knew she had been a youngling he had struck down, and he left her alive deliberately, telling her that her hatred had made her predictable. In the end, Reva chose not to follow in Vader's footsteps. When she had a chance to kill Luke Skywalker, whom she had tracked to Tatooine, she let him live, unable to murder another innocent child. Her story was one of the few among the Inquisitors that ended in something resembling redemption. The Inquisitorius program continued throughout the early years of the Empire, but it was always meant to be temporary. As the number of surviving Jedi dwindled, the need for specialized Jedi hunters decreased. Moreover, the Inquisitors themselves became a liability. They were Force users, and Palpatine's ultimate goal was to monopolize Force power with himself and Vader alone. Eventually, the Inquisitorius would outlive its usefulness. By approximately 3 years before the Battle of Yavin, the Inquisitorius had been disbanded or systematically eliminated. Some Inquisitors died in the field, killed by the Jedi they hunted or by other threats. The Grand Inquisitor died in combat against Kanan Jarrus and his Padawan Ezra Bridger on a mission to eliminate the rebels on Lothal. Other Inquisitors perished in various ways, hunted down by the very prey they had once stalked. Some historians speculate that Vader himself may have eliminated surviving Inquisitors once they were no longer needed, executing them just as he had executed Jedi. If so, it would be grimly fitting. The Inquisitors were former Jedi corrupted to hunt Jedi. In the end, they met the same fate as those they hunted. The legacy of the Inquisitorius was one of terror and tragedy. They represented the corruption of everything the Jedi stood for, proof that even those trained in the light could fall to darkness when broken and twisted by torture and manipulation. Their red spinning lightsabers became symbols of the Empire's reach and the impossibility of escape. For years after their disbandment, survivors of their hunts would have nightmares about those crimson blades spinning toward them, about the Inquisitor's relentless pursuit across the stars. For Vader, the Inquisitorius served its purpose. It extended his reach, allowed him to eliminate Jedi across multiple systems simultaneously, and created a culture of fear among Force sensitives. But he never saw the Inquisitors as anything more than tools. They were not apprentices or students in the way Ahsoka had been. They were weapons he wielded and discarded when their usefulness ended, just as Palpatine had planned from the beginning. Fortress Vader, Monument to Pain. After establishing the Inquisitorius and securing his position as the Emperor's enforcer, Vader received a reward for his loyal service. Palpatine offered him a planet to call his own, a personal domain where he could establish his fortress and base of operations. The Emperor suggested several possibilities. Tatooine, perhaps, where Vader had been born, though that seemed unlikely given his hatred for the desert world. Or maybe Naboo, Padmé's homeworld, which would have its own dark appeal. Vader rejected all these suggestions. He wanted Mustafar. The choice seemed irrational on the surface. Mustafar was the site of Vader's greatest defeat and transformation. It was where he had lost his limbs, where he had burned, where Anakin Skywalker had effectively died. Why would anyone choose to return to the place of their worst trauma? But Vader's reasoning was precisely about confronting that trauma, about drawing power from his pain rather than fleeing from it. Mustafar was also strong in the dark side of the Force. The planet held a locus of dark side energy, a vergence where the dark side flowed particularly strongly. Palpatine understood this motivation. By placing his fortress atop this locus, Vader could draw on its power, using it to enhance his own connection to the dark side and to fuel dark side rituals. The Emperor agreed to Vader's request and granted him control of Mustafar. But Vader did not merely want a fortress. He wanted to use Mustafar's dark side energy for a specific purpose. Deep within him, despite all his claims to have abandoned his past, Vader could not let go of Padmé. He could not accept that she was truly gone forever. The dark side promised power over life and death. If he could channel enough dark side energy, if he could focus it properly, perhaps he could open a doorway to wherever Padmé's spirit had gone. Perhaps he could bring her back. To design his fortress, Palpatine provided Vader with architects and resources. But he also gave him something far more unusual, the mask of an ancient Sith Lord named Darth Vader. This mask was no ordinary artifact. It contained the preserved consciousness of Vader himself, a Sith heretic who had been killed centuries ago, but whose spirit lived on in the mask, capable of possessing whoever wore it. Darth Vader had been an artist in life, obsessed with the idea that destruction was the ultimate form of creation. He had designed weapons that destroyed entire cities not for strategic purposes, but for aesthetic ones, to create momentary works of art in the patterns of destruction and death. His fellow Sith had eventually destroyed his physical body, but his consciousness endured in the mask, waiting for an opportunity to return to the living world. When the Imperial architect appointed to design Vader's fortress examined the mask, Vader's spirit recognized an opportunity. The ancient Sith possessed the architect, using their body to create blueprints for a fortress unlike anything seen in the modern galaxy. The design was both beautiful and terrible, a towering spire of obsidian that would rise from Mustafar's volcanic plains like a dark cathedral. More importantly, the fortress was designed as a massive focusing lens, channeling the dark side energy of the locust beneath it to open a portal to the dark side itself. Construction of the fortress began on the Gehen Plains, an area of relative stability on Mustafar's turbulent surface. Imperial forces established a garrison to protect the construction site, deploying magma troopers specially equipped to operate in Mustafar's extreme conditions. AT-AT walkers patrolled the perimeter while TIE fighters flew overhead. Construction droids worked around the clock, supervised by the possessed architect who insisted on perfection in every detail. The first fortress was completed and activated. Vader entered the focusing chamber, prepared to open the portal to the dark side. But when the structure's systems activated, channeling the locust's energy upward, the design proved unstable. The fortress literally exploded from the surge of dark side power, collapses into rubble. The Imperial garrison pulled back, stunned by the failure. Vader emerged from the wreckage, damaged but alive, and demanded that construction begin again immediately. Momin, speaking through the architect's body, explained that the design needed refinement. He had not accounted for the specific flow of energy from this particular locus. The fortress was rebuilt with modifications, the second design incorporating lessons learned from the first failure. When completed, it was activated again, and again it exploded. This pattern repeated itself 8 times. 8 fortresses were built atop the dark side locus, and 8 times they failed to sustain the portal Vader wanted to open. Each failure released pulses of dark side energy that cascaded across Mustafar, causing volcanic eruptions and storms that disturbed the planet's indigenous Mustafarian population. The construction site was attacked by lava fleas during one attempt. Momin's possessed host body was destroyed multiple times, forcing his spirit to possess new Imperial officers to continue the work. With each failure, Vader's frustration grew, but he refused to give up. He would have his portal. He would reach Padme. Nothing else mattered. The cost in Imperial resources was immense, the loss of life significant, but Palpatine allowed it to continue. Perhaps he was curious to see if Vader could actually succeed. Perhaps he simply enjoyed watching his apprentice torment himself with impossible hope. The 9th design finally achieved stability. When the systems activated, the portal opened and remained open. Dark side energy surged through the fortress, creating a tear in reality itself, a doorway to the netherworld of the Force. Momin, ecstatic that his design had succeeded, used the portal's energy to resurrect his own physical body, pulling himself back from death itself. After centuries as a disembodied spirit, Darth Momin was flesh once again. But while Vader was distracted by the portal, Mustafar's native population launched a coordinated attack on the fortress. The Mustafarians, led by a Force-sensitive elder named Father Kikt, had endured the dark side eruptions caused by the construction. Their planet was screaming in pain from the fortress's presence, and they could no longer allow it to continue. They attacked in force, overwhelming the Imperial garrison despite Vader's intervention. Father Kakakt and other Mustafarian Force users combined their powers to summon a massive wave of lava, flooding the battlefield and consuming the Imperial troops. Even Vader was caught in the lava flow, his armor severely damaged by the molten rock. The garrison was wiped out, every clone trooper killed in the inferno. Only Vader survived, using the Force to lift himself above the lava and retreat back into the fortress. There, he found himself confronted by Darth Vader. The ancient Sith, now restored to his body, attacked Vader immediately. Vader had never intended to help Vader selflessly. He wanted the fortress for himself, to use its power for his own purposes. The two Sith Lords dueled in the focusing chamber, lightsabers clashing amid the swirling energies of the open portal. Vader was a skilled combatant, and he managed to badly damage Vader's already compromised armor and systems. But Vader's raw power in the dark side overwhelmed Vader's technique. Using the Force, Vader lifted a massive stone slab and crushed Vader beneath it, destroying both his resurrected body and the mask that had housed his spirit. Darth Vader was finally, truly dead. With Vader destroyed and the Mustafarian attackers eliminated by the fortress's own power, Vader finally had what he wanted. The portal was open and stable. The fortress had achieved its purpose. Now he could attempt to reach Padme. Vader approached the portal and separated his spirit from his body, a dangerous technique that few could perform. His consciousness entered the portal, leaving his physical form behind in the focusing chamber. On the other side, he found himself in a realm of dark side visions and distorted memories. The Force itself seemed to be testing him, presenting him with twisted reflections of his past. He walked through what appeared to be the Jedi Temple, but it was wrong, corrupted, a dark mirror of what it had been. Shades of Jedi he had killed appeared before him, and he cut them down again. He encountered a vision of Palpatine and destroyed it. These were illusions, he knew, phantoms and tricks meant to distract him from his goal. He pressed forward, searching for any sign of Padme. Finally, he found her, or he found something that looked like her, standing on a balcony overlooking an abyss. Vader called out to her, reached for her, desperate to bring her back. But the shade of Padme looked at him with sadness and horror, then stepped backward off the balcony, plummeting into the darkness below. She was gone, dissolved into nothingness, and Vader understood with terrible certainty that this was all he would ever find. Padme was not in this place. She was not waiting to be rescued. She was simply gone, released into the Force in a way he could never reach. A figure of pure light appeared before him, overwhelming in its brightness and power. Vader tried to fight it, but the light was too strong. It rejected him, casting his spirit back through the portal and into his body. He awakened in the focusing chamber, having failed in his quest completely and absolutely. In his rage and despair, Vader used the fortress's systems to close the portal permanently, destroying the very thing he had worked so hard to create. If he could not have Padme, then the portal was useless to him. He contacted Palpatine and informed him that he was ready to return to Coruscant, ready to resume his duties as the Emperor's enforcer. His quest to resurrect his wife was over. All that remained was service to the Empire and the cultivation of his hatred. The fortress remained standing, however. Unlike the previous 8 attempts, the 9th design had succeeded in structural integrity. It became Vader's personal residence, a dark tower where he could meditate and recuperate between missions. Within its walls, he installed a Bacta tank where he could float and allow his ravaged body some relief from constant pain. The life support systems in his suit were crude by design, keeping him alive but never comfortable. Time in the Bacta tank offered temporary respite, though even this was tainted by the drugs in the Bacta fluid, which caused hallucinations and disturbing dreams. Fortress Vader became a place of dread for Imperial personnel assigned there. The lava flows, the dark side energy that permeated every stone, the knowledge that Darth Vader himself resided within all of it combined to make the fortress a nightmare posting. An Imperial inspector named Vanet was sent to investigate why several stormtroopers from the garrison had gone insane. During his investigation, Vader drove Vanet mad as well through exposure to lava fumes and dark side manipulation, then kept him as a servant. Vanet became utterly devoted to Vader, dedicating his existence to serving the Dark Lord's needs. He was the closest thing Vader had to a companion, though their relationship was hardly one of equals. The fortress was constructed atop not only a Sith cave, but also the ruins of an ancient structure called the Korvax Fortress, which dated back to a time when Mustafar had been a lush, living world. A Force sensitive named Lady Korvax had performed a ritual centuries ago that had transformed Mustafar from paradise to hellscape, attempting to resurrect her dead husband and instead cursing the entire planet. The layers of dark side history beneath Vader's fortress ran deep, making it a nexus of darkness that resonated with Vader's own torment. Over the years, the fortress served its purpose as Vader's base of operations. He would retreat there between campaigns, meditating in the dark or soaking in Bacta while awaiting new orders from Palpatine. The fortress's systems could be used to enhance his power, to focus his rage, and to channel dark side energy for various purposes. It was both his sanctuary and his prison, a monument to his pain and his power. When the Death Star was completed and operational, Director Orson Krennic was summoned to Fortress Vader. There, in the dark halls of his fortress, Vader informed Krennic that the battle station's existence was to remain covert for now, known only to the highest levels of Imperial leadership. The fortress was where Vader chose to conduct such meetings when he wanted to emphasize his power and intimidate those he was instructing. The fortress would stand long after Vader's death. When Kylo Ren visited Mustafar years later, searching for the Sith Wayfinder that would lead him to Exegol, the Dark Tower still dominated the volcanic landscape. Though it had fallen into ruin, though its systems no longer functioned, Fortress Vader remained a monument to one of the galaxy's darkest eras and the tormented soul of the man who built it. The fortress embodied everything Vader had become: imposing, dark, powerful, and ultimately hollow, a shell containing only pain and rage and memories of a love that could never be reclaimed. The Jedi hunt, with the Inquisitorius established and Fortress Vader constructed, Darth Vader settled into his role as the Emperor's primary enforcer. His duties were varied and extensive, but one mission stood above all others in importance: the complete eradication of the Jedi Order. Order 66 had eliminated the vast majority of Jedi, but survivors remained scattered across the galaxy. Each one represented a potential threat to the Empire, a possible rallying point for resistance. They had to be found, they had to be destroyed. Vader hunted Jedi with methodical ruthlessness, Unlike the Inquisitors, who often operated in teams and used tactics focused on wearing down their prey, Vader was a force of nature. When he arrived to confront a Jedi survivor, the outcome was rarely in doubt. His power in the dark side, combined with his complete willingness to use lethal force without hesitation, made him perhaps the most dangerous Jedi killer in galactic history. One of his earliest targets after the Purge was Jedi Master Jocasta Nu, the elderly librarian of the Jedi Temple. Jocasta had dedicated her life to preserving Jedi knowledge and maintaining the Temple's archives. When Order 66 came, she escaped and went into hiding. But she could not leave the galaxy's Force-sensitive children to the Empire's mercy. She returned to Coruscant to access the Temple's archives one final time, seeking to retrieve a list of Force-sensitive children that the Empire could potentially corrupt or eliminate. Vader detected her presence and hunted her through the ruined temple that had once been the center of Jedi power. The Grand Inquisitor accompanied him, eager to claim the kill. But Vader had no intention of sharing this prize. When the Grand Inquisitor moved to strike down the elderly Jedi, Vader blocked his attack, claiming Jocasta for himself. The message was clear: the Inquisitors served at Vader's pleasure and took only what he permitted them to take. Jocasta fought back with surprising ferocity for someone her age, using both her lightsaber and her extensive knowledge of Jedi techniques. But she was ultimately no match for Vader. He struck her down, and as she lay dying, she spoke to him with recognition. She had known Anakin Skywalker. She had seen the boy grow into a young man in the temple halls. Her last words to Vader were a reminder of who he had been, a ghost from his past that he could never fully escape. He executed her without apparent emotion, but inside, the kill likely left another scar on his psyche. Another significant hunt was for Jedi Master Eth Koth, a Zabrak Jedi who had survived Order 66 and attempted to build a new life in hiding. Koth had left the Jedi Order before the Purge, but his Force abilities made him a target. When Vader tracked him down, Koth was living with his wife, trying to protect her and their child. The confrontation was brief and brutal. Vader gave Koth no chance to surrender or flee. He simply killed the former Jedi Master, showing no mercy despite Koth's wife pleading for her husband's life. This was the pattern of Vader's hunts: absolute, merciless, and without the slightest hint of compassion. Vader's hunt for Cal Kestis, a Padawan who survived Order 66, was delegated primarily to the Inquisitors. The second sister and ninth sister pursued Kestis across multiple worlds, but the young Jedi proved remarkably resilient and capable. He evaded the Inquisitors repeatedly, even defeating the second sister in combat. When Kestis infiltrated Fortress Inquisitorius to rescue a captured ally, he discovered the horrifying truth about how Inquisitors were created, seeing the torture chambers and conversion facilities where Jedi were broken and rebuilt as dark side hunters. The second sister, revealed to be Trilla Suduri, confronted Kestis, but experienced a crisis of conscience when her former master, Sarah Junda, appeared and apologized for her role in Trilla's capture and conversion. In that moment of doubt, when Trilla began to turn back toward the light, Vader himself appeared. He engaged Kestis in a duel that demonstrated the vast gulf between a Padawan and a Sith Lord. Vader toyed with him, easily deflecting his attacks and demonstrating techniques that Kestis could not counter. It was only through desperation and help from his allies that Kestis escaped with his life. But Vader did not allow the second sister's moment of redemption to continue. He killed her immediately, executing her for her failure and her wavering conviction. The message to the other Inquisitors was clear. Redemption meant death. Hesitation meant death. Only absolute commitment to the dark side and to their mission would be tolerated. Kestis escaped, but Vader had eliminated a powerful Inquisitor and reminded everyone that failure had only one consequence. Years later, Vader would face Kestis again, this time on Jedha. The confrontation nearly killed Kestis and his companions, but they managed to escape by bringing down a mountain on top of Vader, buying themselves time to flee. Vader survived, of course, digging himself out of the rubble with sheer force of will and dark side power. The incident only increased his determination to eliminate Kestis, but the young Jedi had become skilled at evading Imperial hunters. Vader's most emotionally complex hunt was for Ahsoka Tano, his former Padawan. Ahsoka had left the Jedi Order before the Clone Wars ended, and as a result, she was not technically a Jedi when Order 66 was executed. Nevertheless, she was Force-sensitive, highly skilled, and opposed to the Empire. She became involved with the early Rebel Alliance, operating as an intelligence operative under the codename Fulcrum. When Vader discovered that Ahsoka was alive and active, his reaction was complicated. Part of him wanted to find her, to see his former apprentice again, though he would never admit to such sentiment. Another part of him wanted to destroy her as he had destroyed everything else from his past. The hunt for Ahsoka became personal in a way that most of his missions were not. Their reunion came on the Sith temple world of Malachor. Ahsoka, along with Kanan Jarrus and Ezra Bridger, was seeking knowledge about the Sith to better understand and combat them. Vader ambushed them in the temple, and when Ahsoka saw him, when she heard his voice, something in her recognized the truth. The way he moved, the way he fought, the cadence of his speech, beneath the mechanical breathing, she knew him. Their duel was heartbreaking in its emotional intensity. Ahsoka fought the monster that her master had become, trying to reach whatever remained of Anakin Skywalker beneath the armor. At one point, she managed to slash Vader's mask, damaging it and exposing part of his scarred face. For a moment, she saw Anakin's face, and he spoke to her in a voice that was almost human. "Ahsoka," he said, and the way he spoke her name carried weight and complexity. Was it recognition? Grief? Rage? Some combination of all three? She responded with her own pain. "I won't leave you," she said. "Not this time." His reply was devastating. "Then you will die." Whatever hope she had of reaching him was crushed in that moment. Anakin Skywalker was gone, consumed by Darth Vader so completely that nothing remained. Or if something did remain, it was buried too deep to save. Their duel continued as the temple collapsed around them, ancient Sith machinery exploding and structures crumbling. When Ezra and Conan barely escaped, Ahsoka remained behind, choosing to hold Vader off rather than flee and let him pursue her friends. The temple exploded in a massive detonation. For years, it was believed that Ahsoka had died there, giving her life to stop Vader. The truth was more complicated. She was pulled through time by Ezra Bridger, using the world between worlds, a mystical realm within the Force, but Vader believed her dead. He emerged from the temple's ruins badly damaged, his suit compromised and his body injured, but alive. In his mind, he had killed his former Padawan, eliminated another connection to Anakin Skywalker, and proven once again that sentiment was weakness. The hunt for Obi-Wan Kenobi became perhaps Vader's most obsessive pursuit. His former master had defeated him on Mustafar, had left him burning and broken. Vader's hatred for Obi-Wan was absolute and consuming. For years, he searched for any sign of where his former master was hiding, but Obi-Wan had gone deep into isolation on Tatooine, watching over young Luke Skywalker from a distance and leaving no trace of his presence for Vader to detect. The hunt for Obi-Wan was so important to Vader that he allowed the Inquisitors to focus much of their resources on finding the Jedi Master. The third sister, Reva, made capturing Obi-Wan her personal mission. Using every tool at her disposal, she kidnapped Leia Organa, knowing that Bail Organa would contact Obi-Wan for help. The plan worked, and Obi-Wan came out of hiding to rescue Leia. The reunion between Vader and Obi-Wan was years in the making. When they finally faced each other again, the encounter was devastating for both. Vader demonstrated how much more powerful he had become, using the Force to create walls of fire and manipulate the environment in ways that terrified Obi-Wan. At one point, Vader literally dragged Obi-Wan through fire with the Force, making him experience a taste of what Vader endured on Mustafar. The psychological warfare was as brutal as the physical combat. Obi-Wan managed to escape, but only barely. When they met for their final confrontation years later, just before the events of A New Hope, the emotional weight of their history hung heavy in the air. They dueled aboard the Death Star, two old warriors whose conflict had shaped galactic history. Obi-Wan allowed Vader to strike him down, sacrificing himself to help Luke the others escape, while also ensuring that he continued to guide Luke from beyond death. Vader watched his former master's body vanish the moment his lightsaber touched it, leaving only empty robes behind. It was a hollow victory. He had struck down Obi-Wan, but the Jedi Master had clearly planned this outcome, had chosen this end. Vader had won the duel, but lost something in the process, though he would never admit what. The Jedi hunts continued throughout the Empire's reign, growing less frequent as the years passed and the number of surviving Jedi dwindled to near extinction. Each kill added to Vader's terrible reputation. Stories spread across the galaxy of the Dark Lord who had once been a Jedi himself, who knew all their techniques and tactics, who hunted them without mercy or remorse. Force-sensitive children were taught to fear his name. Rebel operatives learned that if Vader was involved in an operation, retreat was the only sane option. By the time of the Battle of Yavin, the Jedi Order was functionally extinct. Only a handful of Jedi still lived, scattered and hidden so deeply that even Vader could not find them. The Emperor's goal had been achieved. The Jedi, who had stood for 1,000 generations as guardians of peace and justice, were gone. Their temples were ruins. Their knowledge was lost or locked away in imperial vaults. Their children were captured or killed before they could grow into the next generation of Jedi. And Darth Vader stood at the center of this genocide, the primary instrument of the Jedi's destruction. The irony was terrible and complete. The Chosen One, who prophecy said would bring balance to the Force, had instead helped destroy the light side's primary champions. If bringing balance meant eliminating the Jedi's overwhelming presence in galactic affairs, then perhaps Vader had fulfilled the prophecy, but in the darkest possible way. It would take years and the emergence of his son before the prophecy's true meaning would be revealed. Discovery of Luke Skywalker. For 19 years, Darth Vader believed that Padme had died on Mustafar along with their unborn child. Palpatine had told him so, had framed Padme's death as the direct result of Vader's own rage and violence. This lie had been the final chain binding Vader to the dark side, the source of his most profound self-hatred and the fuel for his terrible power. He had killed a person he loved most, had destroyed the future they might have shared, all in a misguided attempt to save her. The truth, which Vader did not know, was far more complex. Padme had survived long enough after giving birth to name her twins before her heart finally gave out, unable to bear the emotional trauma of Anakin's fall. Obi-Wan and Yoda, recognizing the danger that Vader and Palpatine posed to the children, separated them and hid them. Luke was taken to Tatooine to be raised by Anakin's stepbrother Owen Lars and his wife Beru. Leia was adopted by Senator Bail Organa of Alderaan and raised as a princess. Neither child knew their true parentage. Neither knew that the galaxy's most feared enforcer was their father. This secret held for nearly 2 decades. Then came the Battle of Yavin. The Rebel Alliance had obtained plans to the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star battle station capable of destroying entire planets. When Princess Leia Organa was captured carrying those plans, Vader interrogated her personally, never suspecting their true relationship. When she refused to reveal the rebellion's location even under torture and mind probe, Vader stood by as Grand Moff Tarkin demonstrated the Death Star's power by destroying Alderaan, Leia's adopted homeworld, and the place she had grown up. Billions died, including Bail Organa, the man who had raised Leia as his daughter. Vader felt nothing watching the planet's destruction. He did not know he had just killed the man who had protected his daughter. The rebels launched a desperate attack on the Death Star during the Battle of Yavin. Vader piloted his custom TIE advanced fighter, leading the squadron to eliminate the rebel starfighters attacking the station. He was in his element in space combat. Despite his cybernetic body's limitations on the ground, in a starfighter, he was as deadly as he had ever been as Anakin Skywalker. He shot down rebel pilot after rebel pilot with precise and efficient fire. Then he targeted a particular X-wing, making an attack run on the Death Star's thermal exhaust port. Vader had the pilot in his sights, his finger on the trigger, ready to fire. But in that moment, something shifted. He felt a presence in the Force unlike anything he had experienced in years. The Force signature was powerful, untrained, but somehow achingly familiar. It reminded him of the thought was too dangerous to complete. Vader fired, but at that moment, the Millennium Falcon appeared and attacked his TIE fighter, disrupting his shot. Vader's fighter was damaged and sent spinning into space. By the time he regained control, the Death Star had been destroyed, blown apart by a perfect shot fired by that unknown pilot down the thermal exhaust port. Vader survived, recovered, and returned to Imperial service. But the question nagged at him. Who was that pilot? That presence in the Force had been too powerful to ignore, too significant. When he reported to Palpatine, the Emperor was surprisingly untroubled by the Death Star's loss. He had sensed the same thing. Vader had a powerful Force presence among the rebels. In the aftermath of the Death Star's destruction, Vader became obsessed with identifying the pilot who had made the shot. The Emperor had tasked him with hunting down the rebels and recovering from the embarrassment of losing the Death Star. But Vader's personal mission was finding that pilot. He hired Boba Fett, one of the galaxy's premier bounty hunters, to investigate and track down any information about the rebel responsible. When Boba Fett returned with his report, the information he provided shook Vader to his core. The pilot's name was Luke Skywalker. For a moment, Vader's world narrowed to that single word. It was impossible. Padme had died pregnant. The child had died with her. That's what Palpatine had told him, and Vader had never thought to question it. But Skywalker was not a common name, and that Force presence had been so strong, so familiar. Could it be? Vader immediately confronted Palpatine, demanding answers. The Emperor, caught off guard by the revelation, seemed genuinely surprised. Either he had not known about Luke's existence, or he had hidden it even from Vader. The Emperor quickly adapted to this new information, declaring that this young Skywalker could destroy them if he became a Jedi. He ordered Vader to find the boy and eliminate the threat. But Vader had other ideas. As he processed the implications, as he searched his feelings in the Force, certainty grew within him. This was his son. Padme had given birth before dying, the children perhaps, though he didn't know about Leia, yet had survived. Someone had hidden them from him, had taken his own offspring and kept them secret for 19 years. The rage he felt at this deception was volcanic, but beneath that rage was something else, something he had not allowed himself to feel in years: hope. If Luke was his son, then he was not alone. He had family, blood of his blood, inheritor of his power in the Force. The Emperor wanted Luke destroyed, but Vader had a different vision. He would find Luke. He would turn him to the dark side. Together, as father and son, they could overthrow the Emperor and rule the galaxy together. It was the same plan he had once offered Padme on Mustafar, the dream of power that had driven him to darkness. Now that dream could be fulfilled through his son. He will be mine, Vader vowed. It will all be mine. The discovery of Luke Skywalker changed everything for Darth Vader. For 19 years, he had been a weapon wielded by Palpatine, a tool to enforce the Emperor's will across the galaxy. He had accepted this role because he had nothing else, because he had destroyed everything that might have given his life meaning. But now he had a purpose beyond mere service. He had a son to find, to turn, to claim. Yet with this hope came complications. The existence of his son meant that Palpatine had lied to him, or at least had hidden information from him. It meant that somewhere, someone had known about Luke and had hidden him deliberately. The boy had been raised on Tatooine under the protection of Owen and Beru Lars, Owen being Anakin's stepbrother, which meant Obi-Wan had likely been involved in hiding him. The realization that his former master had been watching over his son all these years, while Vader believed both master and child were dead, added another layer to his hatred for Obi-Wan. Vader began his own investigation into Luke's past. He traveled to Tatooine after learning that was where Luke had been raised. There, he discovered that Owen and Beru Lars had been killed by Imperial stormtroopers searching for the droids that carried the Death Star plans. Vader felt no grief for their deaths. They were strangers to him despite Owen being family. But he recognized that their deaths had freed Luke from his life as a moisture farmer and pushed him toward whatever destiny awaited. He also discovered evidence that Padme had given birth on Polis Massa, a remote asteroid facility where Obi-Wan had taken her. Medical records, heavily encrypted and nearly destroyed, confirmed what Vader now knew to be true. Padme had given birth to a child the records he found mentioned only one, not knowing about Leia before dying. Someone, likely Obi-Wan, had then hidden the child on Tatooine. In his investigation, Vader returned to Naboo, Padme's homeworld, seeking answers about her final days. There, he encountered her former handmaidens, women who had served as Padme's protectors and companions during her time as queen and then senator. These women looked eerily like Padme herself, as they had been chosen partially for their resemblance to her to serve as decoys. Seeing them was psychologically devastating for Vader, each face a ghost of the woman he had lost. The handmaidens knew the truth. They knew about Luke, though not his current location. They confronted Vader with the reality of what he had become, speaking to him as if he was still Anakin Skywalker. One of them, Sabé, who had been Padme's closest friend and most trusted double, told Vader plainly what Padme would have thought of him now. The words were like blades, cutting through his armor and finding the wounds that never healed. During this journey into his past, something extraordinary happened. Vader's connection to the Force became unstable. The emotional trauma of confronting his history, combined with his obsession with his son, caused his Force powers to surge out of control. He began experiencing waves of Force energy that he could not contain or direct. At one point, his runaway power threatened to tear apart the Star Destroyer he was on, presenting a danger not just to his enemies, but to the Empire itself. Sabé, recognizing what was happening, helped Vader find an isolated location where he could practice regaining control over his powers. The encounter was strange and complicated. She was helping the man who had killed her friend, but she did so because she saw glimpses of Anakin still trapped within Vader. Eventually, Vader regained control and returned to Imperial service, but the incident had shown him how deeply the discovery of his son had affected him. The father-son conflict, the hunt for Luke Skywalker, consumed Vader for the 3 years between the Battle of Yavin and the Battle of Hoth. The young rebel pilot proved elusive, protected by the Alliance, and growing in his understanding of the Force. Vader knew that Luke was training, developing his abilities, becoming more powerful. This should have concerned him. A trained Force user opposed to the Empire was dangerous, but instead, it filled him with a dark pride. His son was powerful. His son was strong. When they finally met, it would be a meeting of true significance. The Emperor also knew about Luke and had his own plans. Palpatine saw in Luke Skywalker a potential replacement for Vader, a younger and less damaged apprentice. The Sith tradition required that the apprentice eventually overthrow the master, and Palpatine had been anticipating that Vader would try to do so eventually. Now, with Luke's existence revealed, the Emperor could play father and son against each other, ensuring that whoever survived would be absolutely loyal to him. The Battle of Hoth brought Vader closer to his son than he had been since Luke's birth. When the Empire discovered the rebel base on the ice planet Hoth, Vader personally led the assault. He was hoping to capture Luke there, but the young Skywalker escaped with Han Solo and Princess Leia on the Millennium Falcon. Vader immediately began tracking them, deploying bounty hunters across the galaxy to find Solo's ship. One of those bounty hunters was Boba Fett, who succeeded where others failed. He tracked the Millennium Falcon to Cloud City on Bespin and reported its location to Vader. The Dark Lord immediately saw an opportunity. He could use Solo and Leia as bait to lure Luke to Cloud City. The young Jedi would sense his friends in danger and come to rescue them, walking right into Vader's trap. Vader made a deal with Lando Calrissian, the Baron Administrator of Cloud City. In exchange for the city's continued independence, Lando would allow Vader to set his trap. Solo, Leia, Chewbacca, and C-3PO were captured and held as prisoners. Vader tests the carbon freezing process on Solo, intending to use it to capture Luke safely. If Vader could freeze his son in carbonite, he could transport him to the Emperor without risk of Luke escaping or resisting. Solo survived the freezing process, proving it would work, and was turned over to Boba Fett to be delivered to Jabba the Hutt. Luke arrived at Cloud City just as Vader had predicted. The young Jedi sensed his friends in danger and abandoned his training with Yoda on Dagobah to rescue them. Both Yoda and Obi-Wan's spirit tried to stop him, warning that he was not ready to face Vader. But Luke would not abandon his friends, even if it meant confronting the Dark Lord of the Sith unprepared. The confrontation in Cloud City's carbon freezing chamber was the first time Vader and Luke knowingly met face to face. For Luke, this was the monster who had served the Empire, who had hunted down the Jedi, who represented everything evil about the galactic regime. For Vader, this was his son, his legacy, his hope for the future. The disconnect between their perspectives made the duel that followed all the more tragic. Vader had no intention of killing Luke. His goal was to capture him, to convince him to embrace the dark side, to forge him into a powerful ally. But he also needed to demonstrate his superiority, to break Luke's confidence in the Jedi teachings and in his own power. The duel was as much about psychological warfare as physical combat. Luke fought bravely, but was outmatched. Vader had decades of experience and training. He was a master of lightsaber combat who had defeated some of the best Jedi warriors in history. Luke had received only minimal training from Obi-Wan and a few months with Yoda. The difference in skill was vast. Vader toyed with Luke, blocking his strikes effortlessly, countering with attacks that drove the young Jedi back. At one point, Vader used the Force to hurl debris at Luke, demonstrating powers that the young Skywalker could not match. The duel moved through Cloud City's industrial areas, across catwalks and platforms suspended over vast drops. Vader's strategy was to exhaust Luke, to tire him out physically and mentally until he had no choice but to listen. When they reached a platform overlooking a reactor shaft, Vader decided it was time to end the duel. With a powerful strike, he severed Luke's right hand, sending his son's lightsaber falling into the abyss below. Luke collapsed, cradling his severed wrist, defenseless and defeated. Vader stood over him, the victor in every sense. But rather than delivering a killing blow or immediately freezing him in carbonite, Vader spoke. His words would change Luke's life forever and shake the foundation of everything the young Jedi believed. "Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father?" Vader said, his mechanical voice echoing through the chamber. Luke, in pain and fear, replied defiantly, "He told me enough. He told me you killed him." "No," Vader said. "I am your father." The revelation hit Luke like a physical blow. He denied it, screamed that it wasn't true, that it was impossible. But Vader continued, laying out a vision of the future. Luke could be trained in the dark side. Together, as father and son, they could overthrow the Emperor and rule the galaxy. They could bring order to the chaos, ensure that everything Vader had sacrificed for would not be in vain. Luke, facing the most terrible truth imaginable, refused. Rather than accept Vader's offer, rather than join his father in darkness, Luke made a choice that would define his character and his destiny. He let go of the platform and threw himself backward into the reactor shaft, choosing apparent death over the dark side. Luke fell through the shaft and tumbled out through a vent onto an antenna hanging beneath Cloud City. There he clung to life, calling out through the Force for help. Leia, who had escaped with Lando and Chewbacca, sensed his call, and they rescued him just before Vader could locate him. The Millennium Falcon escaped into hyperspace, and Vader was left with nothing. He had found his son, revealed the truth to him, and lost him in the same encounter. The next 3 years were a period of obsession for Vader. He could not stop thinking about Luke, about their confrontation, about the choice his son had made. Luke had chosen possible death over joining him. That rejection hurt in ways Vader did not want to examine. But he also respected Luke's strength, his refusal to give in to fear. These were qualities Vader recognized, perhaps qualities he had once possessed as Anakin Skywalker. Luke, meanwhile, was dealing with the trauma of the revelation. He had learned that the father he idealized was not only dead, but had become the very monster he opposed. The knowledge that he carried Vader's blood, that the potential for such darkness existed within him, became Luke's greatest fear. He could become like his father. The path to the dark side was inside him, waiting to be activated by anger, fear, or hatred. The Emperor, learning of the failed capture at Cloud City, summoned Vader. Palpatine now knew that Luke was Vader's son, and he saw the young Skywalker as a threat that must be eliminated or turned. He tasked Vader with bringing Luke before him, with orchestrating a confrontation where the Emperor could attempt to corrupt Luke personally. If Vader failed, Palpatine implied, perhaps Luke would make a superior apprentice. The threat was clear. Vader could be replaced. The path to redemption. The construction of a second Death Star became the Emperor's primary focus. This new battle station would be even more powerful than the first, and it would be used to crush the Rebel Alliance once and for all. Palpatine personally oversaw its construction, and he brought Vader with him to the forest moon of Endor, where the Death Star was being built in orbit. But the Death Star was not Palpatine's only goal. The Emperor had orchestrated an elaborate trap. He had allowed the Rebel Alliance to learn about the second Death Star and had deliberately leaked information suggesting the station was still under construction and vulnerable. In reality, the Death Star was fully operational. When the rebels launched their attack, they would be destroyed and their leadership eliminated. Luke Skywalker would be among them, and that was when Palpatine would make his move. Luke, now a more mature and confident Jedi, had learned the full truth about his father from Yoda and Obi-Wan's spirit. He knew that Vader was Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one who had fallen to darkness. He also knew that Leia was his twin sister, though he kept this information from her for her own protection. Armed with this knowledge and against the advice of his mentors, Luke made a decision that seemed foolish to everyone who cared about him. He decided to confront his father and try to turn him back to the light. Yoda and Obi-Wan had both insisted that Vader was beyond saving, that the only way to end the Emperor's reign was to kill both Sith Lords. Luke refused to accept this. He believed with absolute conviction that there was still good in his father, that Anakin Skywalker had not been completely destroyed. Perhaps it was youthful optimism, perhaps it was desperation, or perhaps Luke sensed something through their Force bond that others could not see. Luke surrendered himself to Imperial forces on Endor, asking to be brought to Vader. When father and son met again, the encounter was markedly different from Cloud City. Luke was calm, centered, confident in a way he had not been before. He spoke to Vader not with fear or hatred, but with compassion, calling him Father and insisting that he could not be corrupted. Vader's response was dismissive. "You don't know the power of the dark side. I must obey my master." But Luke persisted. "Then my father is truly dead," he said, his words heavy with sorrow. For a moment, something flickered in Vader. Luke was speaking to him as a son to a father, not as a rebel to an Imperial enforcer. The dynamic was fundamentally different from their previous encounter. At Cloud City, Vader had held all the power, had been in complete control. Here on Endor, Luke had come to him voluntarily, had surrendered, had placed himself in Vader's hands. The implicit trust in that act was staggering. Vader took Luke to the Emperor as commanded, but as they traveled, he probed Luke's thoughts through the Force, searching for weaknesses, for fears he could exploit. What he found shocked him. Luke had a sister, another child of Anakin Skywalker, Leia Organa, the princess he had interrogated and whose home world he had watched being destroyed, was his daughter. The revelation should have empowered Vader, given him additional leverage. Instead, it complicated everything further. The confrontation aboard the second Death Star was the culmination of years of manipulation by Palpatine. The Emperor orchestrated everything perfectly, pitting father and son against each other while the battle raged outside. He taunted Luke about the Rebel fleet's predicament, about how the Death Star was fully operational and his friends were walking into a trap. The psychological pressure was immense, designed to push Luke toward anger and hatred. Palpatine commanded Luke to strike him down, to give in to his hatred and take the Emperor's life. This was the ultimate test. If Luke attacked in anger, he would take his first step toward the dark side, and Palpatine would have won. Luke refused, maintaining his composure even as the Emperor described the destruction of the Rebel fleet. Then Palpatine shifted tactics. He commanded Vader to fight Luke, to force his son to defend himself. The duel that followed was nothing like their encounter at Cloud City. This time, Luke fought only defensively, refusing to attack his father aggressively. He was trying not to kill Vader, but to reach Anakin, to prove that he would not fall to the dark side no matter what happened. Vader pressed his attack, driven by the Emperor's will and his own conflicted emotions. The duel ranged across the throne room, upstairs, and into shadows. Luke eventually gained the high ground and, in a moment of clear superiority, deactivated his lightsaber. He would not fight his father anymore. He was a Jedi, like his father before him. But Vader would not stop. He attacked again, and Luke was forced to defend himself. Vader probed Luke's mind, sensing his thoughts about Leia. when he spoke of turning Leia to the dark side instead of claiming his daughter if his son would not join him. Something inside Luke snapped. This was the emotional trigger Palpatine had been waiting for. Luke's carefully maintained control shattered under the threat to his sister. He attacked Vader with a fury that was overwhelming, driven by fear for Leia and rage at the threat. Vader tried to defend himself, but was overpowered by Luke's assault. The young Jedi's strikes were relentless, each one powered by raw emotion rather than Jedi serenity. The duel ended when Luke severed Vader's right hand, the cybernetic hand that mirrored Luke's own prosthetic. Vader fell, defeated, defenseless. Luke stood over him, his green lightsaber raised for a killing blow, breathing hard, his face twisted with rage and fear and hatred. The Emperor laughed, delighted by what he saw. This was it. Luke would kill his father, and in that act of patricide fueled by hatred, he would fall to the dark side. Palpatine would have a powerful new apprentice, perhaps even more powerful than Vader had been. But Luke looked at his own mechanical hand, then at his father's severed mechanical hand, and saw the truth. He was becoming like Vader, was taking steps down the same dark path. With tremendous effort, Luke pulled back from the edge. He deactivated his lightsaber and threw it away, renouncing violence. He turned to the Emperor and spoke words that would define the outcome of the entire conflict. "I am a Jedi, like my father before me." Palpatine's expression shifted from delight to rage. He had been so close to corrupting Luke, and the boy had resisted. Very well, if Luke would not become his apprentice, he would die. The Emperor unleashed Force lightning, blue-white bolts of energy that struck Luke and coursed through his body. The young Jedi screamed in agony, his body convulsing under the assault. Vader lay on the floor nearby, watching his son being tortured to death. The Emperor's attack was relentless, and Luke's screams filled the throne room. Vader watched, conflict tearing him apart. His son was dying. The boy who had come to him with trust, who believed there was still good in him, who had called him father, that boy was being murdered before his eyes. Luke, in his pain, looked at his father, not at Vader the Sith Lord, but at Anakin Skywalker, the man. He called out, not with accusation, but with hope. "Father, please." In that moment, Anakin Skywalker returned. The choice Vader made then was the most important decision of his life, eclipsing even his choice to serve Palpatine on Mustafar. He stood, lifted the Emperor, and threw him down the reactor shaft to his death. Palpatine's lightning redirected through Vader's suit, frying its systems and devastating his life support. As the Emperor fell screaming into the reactor core, Vader collapsed, his body shutting down. Luke rushed to his father's side, trying to help him stand, desperate to get him to a ship before the Death Star exploded. But Vader knew he was dying. The Emperor's lightning had destroyed his suit's functions, and without it, he could not breathe. He had only minutes left. "Luke, help me take this mask off," Vader said, his voice distorted by his damaged vocabulator. Luke protested, "But you'll die." "Nothing can stop that now," Vader replied. "Just for once, let me look on you with my own eyes." Luke removed his father's mask, revealing the scarred face beneath. Anakin Skywalker looked at his son without mechanical assistance for the first time, seeing him clearly in his final moments. The man beneath the mask was pale, scarred, his eyes haunted by decades of pain and darkness. But in that moment, he was at peace. "You were right," Anakin said, his voice now natural, no longer filtered through machinery. "Tell your sister you were right." With those words, Anakin Skywalker died, his body finally free from the pain that had tormented him for decades. He had fulfilled the prophecy after all, not by serving the Sith, but by destroying them. He had brought balance to the Force by eliminating the last two Sith Lords in existence, sacrificing his own life to save his son and restore the light. Luke escaped the Death Star with his father's body as the station exploded above Endor. On the forest moon, as the rebellion celebrated their victory, Luke built a funeral pyre for Anakin Skywalker. As the flames consumed the empty armor and the mechanical remains of Darth Vader, Luke stood alone, grieving for the father he had barely known and the time they would never share. But Anakin had not truly died. In his last moments, through his act of selfless sacrifice and his return to the light, Anakin had learned the secret that Qui-Gon Jinn had discovered. He became one with the Force, his consciousness preserved beyond death. That night, as the celebration continued, Luke saw three Force spirits standing together, watching over the victory they had helped achieve. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yoda, and Anakin Skywalker, restored and redeemed, no longer burdened by the darkness that had consumed him for so long. The tragedy of Darth Vader had ended. The prophecy of the Chosen One had been fulfilled. Anakin Skywalker had brought balance to the Force, but only through a path that led through darkness, suffering, and eventual redemption. His story remains one of the most complex and emotionally powerful in the entire Star Wars saga. A testament to the idea that even in the deepest darkness, the light can return for those brave enough to choose it. And there we have it, the complete chronicle of Darth Vader, from his miraculous birth on Tatooine to his redemptive sacrifice aboard the second Death Star. We've journeyed through his training as a Jedi, his fall to the dark side, his transformation into the Empire's most feared enforcer, and finally, his return to the light through the love of his son. The story of Darth Vader is ultimately a story about choices. Every step of his journey involved decisions, some made in moments of clarity and others made in passion or fear. Some of those choices led him toward darkness, and others ultimately redeemed him. His path was neither inevitable nor predetermined, despite what prophecy might have suggested. At every turn, Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader had the power to choose differently, to take another path. This is what makes his story so enduringly powerful. Vader was not a simple villain, not a one-dimensional evil force. He was a man who loved deeply, who feared loss, who made terrible mistakes and committed monstrous crimes, but who ultimately chose redemption when given the chance. His story reminds us that no one is beyond saving, that even after decades of darkness, the light can return. The legacy of Darth Vader extends far beyond his own life. His actions shaped the galaxy for generations. The Jedi Order was destroyed largely by his hand, and though Luke Skywalker would attempt to rebuild it, the scars of that genocide would never fully heal. The empire he served terrorized countless worlds. The lives he took, from younglings in the Jedi Temple to rebel soldiers at Scarif, numbered in the billions. Yet he also fulfilled his destiny as the Chosen One. By destroying the Emperor, by eliminating the last of the Sith, Anakin brought balance to the Force in a way that could not have been achieved through light alone. The prophecy required someone who who understood both the light and the dark, someone who had walked both paths and could see clearly the cost of each. For those of us who have followed his story across films, television shows, comics, and novels, Darth Vader remains an endlessly fascinating character. He represents our own struggles with temptation, with the ease of choosing power over principle, with the difficulty of admitting when we've made terrible mistakes. And his redemption offers hope that it's never too late to choose the right path, that love and courage can overcome even the deepest darkness. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the life and times of Darth Vader, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. We'll continue bringing you comprehensive explorations of Star Wars lore, helping you drift off to sleep with stories from that galaxy far, far away. May the Force be with you always.